Egypt has initiated plans to mitigate the impact of the growing wheat shortages on its people. And 8 agencies are deploying long-term assistance to the Afghanistan earthquake victims, with this and more coming ahead on The World Today. Hello, this is Eyeafrica TV and you are watching The World Today News Bulletin live from our studios in Banjul. Many thanks for joining us. I am Amadou Kante and now the news in detail. Now, as the world continues to grapple with wheat shortages in the global market amid the Russia-Ukraine conflict, authorities in Egypt have begun a new initiative to minimize its impact on the population. Now, officials of the North African nations are now considering mixing white sweet potatoes with wheat flour to produce subsidized bread as part of efforts to reduce the country's importation of wheat by 500,000 tons. The country's Center for Agricultural Research is currently heading experimental process before allowing the mixing of the white sweet potato with bread. Let's have more details of that in this report.
Amid the ongoing Russian-Ukrainian crisis, Egypt says its wheat bill this year has so far increased by nearly $1.2 billion. The populous North African nation is one of the largest wheat importers in the world. To save consumption of the strategic grain, Egypt's Minister of Supply Ali Mousselhi announced that the country is mulling adding white sweet potato to subsidize bread.
We are facing exceptional circumstances globally. So, every grain of wheat saved is essential for our country, and we have to support that move. The sweet potato is still under research and has not been fully implemented in the country.
A bakery in Al-Wadi Al-Gadid, the remote governorship in the western desert, has started to experiment a genetically modified white sweet potato. It contains more carbohydrates, vitamin A, and less glycemic index, meaning it's less sweeter than the normal sweet potato. The vegetable, though, has to be boiled before mixing it with the wheat flour mix, a move that could pose some health hazards.
This is considered a new product and therefore it must be proven safe and healthy. It must not contain any nutritional risks. The first governorship to try this flour mix is in Al-Wadi Al-Gadid. It appears to have been successful. The success of this trial in big governorships like Cairo will rely on how residents will accept that new bread.
The National Center for Agricultural Research is currently leading the studies needed to give the green light for introducing white sweet potatoes to bread. A 10 to 20% of the vegetable is suggested to be added to the bread flour mix, which could see wheat consumption drop by up to 1 million tons. That could help the country save up to $450 million annually in imports.
Before mulling introducing sweet potato, Egypt considered adding barley and corn flour to its bread, but both were deemed not practical. With about 32,000 acres cultivated, Egypt produces some 450,000 tons of sweet potato annually. But it is a seasonal crop, so even if the Agriculture Ministry approves it, it will be a temporary solution that cannot last throughout the year.
And that report that is coming from the Egyptian capital, Cairo. Elsewhere in the continent, Kenya's public transport operators have been expressing concerns over the high increase in prices of fuel in the country, leaving them worried over the situation. Now, like in many countries, the recent swell in prices of fuel also triggered skyrocketing prices of food commodities in this African nation. As the Kenyan government intends to remove its subsidy on fuel, stakeholders in the transport sector predict a bleak situation ahead. Here's more details of that in this report.
Edwin Mkabana is the managing director of the Kenya Bus Service. It is the biggest and oldest public transport operator in the city. He says the high cost of fuel has really hit them hard.
We have had to take other austerity measures. Like we cut down staff quite a bit. We actually did some pay adjustments downwards for people to continue keeping jobs. We continue to service the vehicles. Some of them we used to service them at 5,000 kilometers. Now we are using We are servicing at 7,500 kilometers.
Kenya's public transport employs the use of both buses and minibuses, locally called matatu. Evans Mashuki is the driver of one of the companies that runs these minibuses. He says before the spike in prices, fuel worth $20 was enough to take him a day. But today, he must have between $40 to $50.
And the owner needs the money. If you don't reach the target, tomorrow you'll not wake up with this vehicle.
I'm used to going with close to $10 a day. That's in international currency, but currently it's less than that. So my living standard has gone down. I cannot do the things that I used to do to my children. I have to cut down on costs, a lot of things.
According to the Kenya Transporters Association, fuel contributes up to 35% of the total direct transport costs and other costs such as for tires and spare parts, since they are all imported.
Operators in the public transport sector announced an increase in fuel prices to compensate for the increased cost of operations. But Edwin Mkabana says they have been unable to implement it, with many people experiencing financial difficulties.
You can see the inability to pay high fuel prices compounded with the dollar fluctuation. So the transport industry, especially public transport, is in a total mess.
The Kenyan government has been offering subsidies to cushion the people from increased fuel prices, but there are plans to have these subsidies removed. Players are predicting tough times ahead should that happen.
We will have to park buses, probably operate only during peak times to see what happens, but I see a difficult time.
In the East African country, high fuel prices have led to a high cost of living, and a further increase will make things worse.
Now, let's stay within this African region, because following the easing of the COVID-19 regulations some 6 months ago, Uganda's economy is reported to be on the right footing on its recovery drive, according to a World Bank report. Now, despite the adverse effects of the global health crisis and the impact of the Ukrainian conflict, the World Bank said the Ugandan GDP grows by over 4% in the first half of 2022. Cognizant of the recent soaring prices of food commodities in this African country, experts observe that the vulnerable class need to be supported. Here's more details of that in this report.
After ditching coronavirus restrictions in January this year, Uganda bounced back into a strong economic recovery, with GDP growing by 4.3% in the first half of 2022, according to new data from the World Bank. The recovery was supported mainly by the services sector, including leisure and entertainment, hotel and food services. However, recent shocks, including the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine conflict, are threatening livelihoods.
We have been working with the government to try to come up with some social protection space in terms of an area where we can do more to try to target those who need help and make sure that they are supported. And I believe the cabinet already has a paper out on, or approved rather, on social protection. And there are some efforts now to try to start to move in terms into the design of a program to reach those who really need the help the most.
The latest Uganda Economic report by the World Bank shows rising commodity prices and disruption to trade and supply chains are worsening conditions for many households, especially those in urban areas just recovering from the severe effects of the COVID-19 restrictions. Economic analysts suggest the government's planned social protection programs should target low-income households.
We must address the poor. This country must address that 80% of the people through identifying those who can produce and supporting them, giving higher price to people who produce cotton, coffee. Let them get a higher price. We're going to produce more.
World Bank figures show Uganda's economy will grow at 3.7% this year, lower than pre-pandemic projections of over 6%. Uganda is trying to fast-track the exploitation of its oil and gas resources, a move expected to boost the country's economy. But the World Bank argues the revenues from oil and gas may not immediately reach the pockets of those who need it most.
It's really a matter of making sure that we keep the diversification of the economy at the forefront, and we don't put all our eggs into the oil and gas basket, but rather we continue to try to move people out of subsistence into commercial agriculture for them to then, really get the benefits of the economic changes that are expected out of the oil production.
The report recommends accelerated vaccination efforts to avoid the resurgence of COVID-19, but also cautions the government to keep a lid on debt levels to help the economy shift from a fragile situation to a more resilient one.
And from the report there from the Ugandan capital Kampala back in the Gambia, the Minister of Health and Social Welfare will launch a clinical waste management center tomorrow at its complex in Farato. Now, the waste collection center will accommodate the treatment of waste generated across the country and later cross them into usable product. Moses Imendi has the details in this report.
Recognizing the health implication and vulnerability of communities to clinical waste such as surgical material, injections and radioactive material, the Ministry of Health will launch a clinical waste treatment machine called EcoSterile 250 at its Farato complex. Another machine named EcoSterile 75 is also planted at the Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital in Banjul to accommodate and treat clinical waste as well. The environmentally friendly machines were acquired through a World Bank support to the health sector for the treatment of highly toxic and infectious clinical waste into byproducts subject to recycling. Lamin Enes Fofana, Program Officer of Environmental Health Unit, said poor healthcare waste management exposes health workers, waste handlers and communities to infections and toxic effects that result in diseases and injuries. Therefore, the availability of a functional treatment unit is crucial. He then explained the use of the clinical waste treatment machines.
EcoSterile 250 series is a non-incinerator waste treatment machine that reduces the volume of waste to the landfill by up to 80% and weight reduction up to 10%. This waste is crossed into an aspect unrecognizable. The waste is crossed in the EcoSterile required only a small amount of energy, few staff, no water, and they generate no toxic waste. This unique process has been conceived to satisfy the agenda and objective of the Environment Health Unit, by far the Ministry of Health and the Gambia government. The waste treated with EcoSterile is hazardous waste produced by medical activities, care unit of infectious diseases, including hepatology, histology, isolation unit for surgery departments, obstetric or gynecology departments. The treated waste can be integrated to the traditional waste treatment channels. It can be landfill and recycled or recovered. Resulting waste can be used as fuel to generate electric power and to the production of cement.
Mr. Fofana added that the waste treatment center will save health workers, the community and the environment from hazards. Karamba Keita, Deputy Permanent Secretary Technical at the Ministry of Health, said the acquisition of the machines is a dream come true, noting that clinical waste management has always been a long-standing challenge of the Health Ministry.
Our challenge is in the sense that it causes a lot of cross-contamination, cross-infection, not only to the healthcare workers, but also to the public. As we may be aware, clinical waste, after being collected from health facilities, before the commencement of this magnificent machine, which is now going to take care of all clinical waste is collected alongside with domestic household waste, and these are all disposed of at the usual common dump sites.
The two state-of-the-art EcoSterile healthcare waste treatment machines were secured in fulfillment of the Health Ministry's quest to modernize clinical waste management in the country. The EcoSterile 250 machine is the first of its kind in the Gambia. The machines will accommodate waste generated within the Greater Banjul area, West Coast region and probably beyond. Clinical waste will be managed by collection, segregation, temporal storage, safe and appropriate transportation, and finally disposal by its handlers. Moses Mendy, Eyeafrica News.
This is Eyeafrica TV and you are watching the World Today News Bulletin coming to life from our studios in Banjul. And from that report there by Moses Mendy, we now take a break and come back shortly. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back, and once again, many thanks for joining us. And let's now look at the rest of the stories. Now, defense attorney for the former senior Gambia petroleum officials who are standing trial on an 8-count economic crime trial has told the Banjul High Court that conspiracy to commit economic crime offense is not known to law. Now, attorney Christopher Emmanuel Mane made the statement during his no case to answer submission. In the case, former Gambia Petroleum Managing Director Sehu Drame and former operations manager Lamin Gassama are charged with 8-count charges, 3 of which are economic crimes and 5 other charges. Mavuji Sise tells us more of that in this report.
In his submission on count 1 of the charges against the accused person, lawyer Menen said it is his submission that there is no such offense known to the law, and said the law is right that an accused cannot be convicted on offenses that are not created by law. Count 1 of the charges against the accused persons allege that Drame and Gassama conspired to commit economic crime contrary to Section 368 of the Criminal Code, Cap 10, Volume 3, Laws of the Gambia 2009. However, defense attorney Menen argued that the 1997 Constitution does not create any offense that is referred to as conspiracy to commit economic crime, and told the court that the economic crime offenses was created by Decree 16 and amended by Decree 18 in 1994. I have looked at Section 368 of the Criminal Code, and the offense conspiracy to commit economic crime does not exist anywhere. I have not seen it anywhere. The offense of economic crime was created by a military decree and was amended by another decree. It was before the coming of the 1997 Constitution, he argued. Lawyer Menen said the decree is only saved by 332 transitional provision of the Constitution as an existing law, but only to the extent of consistency with the Constitution, and added that any provision of the decree that is inconsistent with the Constitution will be null and void to the level of its inconsistency. He argued that Section 368 of the Criminal Code states that conspiracy to commit a felony, and that it does not talk about conspiracy to commit economic crime. There is absolutely no evidence before this honorable court to support the particulars of the alleged crimes. In fact, the evidence of the prosecution witnesses is that the second accused was mostly out of the jurisdiction, lawyer Menen told the court. The attorney further told the court that there is also no evidence that the accused persons caused economic loss to the government of the Gambia, and therefore they did not do what has never happened. He argued that uplifting products on negative balance was a standard operational procedure at Gambia Petroleum from its inception in 2009 to 31st October 2021, Attorney Menen said the evidence of Momodu Haidara, PW9, and Lamin Toure, PW2, show that there is no OMC that has never taken products on a negative balance. My lady, even the Gambia government's own OMC, which is GNPC, was on negative balance as of 31st October 2021. My lady, that cannot be an economic crime, and there is no evidence before this honorable court that most of the OMCs have replenished the products they have uplifted from Gam Petroleum either in cash or kind, Menen told the court. Attorney Menen further informed the court that there is an ongoing investigation by the Gam Petroleum Board to recover the balance owed by the OMCs on the negative balance. I want my lady to uphold the no case to answer submission. Lawyer Menen concluded his submission on count 1 of the charges against the accused persons. For Eyeafrica News, I am Mafuji Sise.
And from the report by Mafuji Sise, on to our final story now, because following the country's deadliest earthquake in recent years, aid agencies, including the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, are providing long-term support for victims in Afghanistan. More than 1,000 people were reported killed, and at least 2,000 people were injured, leaving thousands in deteriorating conditions. Let's have more details of that in this report.
The UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, has prepared a 3-month emergency plan, but it's working on a longer-term plan to address needs such as shelter. OCHA says they're monitoring the situation in the quake-hit areas through regular visits.
The 3-month plan is really the emergency response. But then, obviously, other specialized agencies will be looking, and NGOs, will be looking at the longer plan, and that, as I said, reconstruction, livelihood, things that are not of immediate response.
Some Afghan humanitarian organizations are also on the ground. Al-Mawasat has launched an aid campaign for the victims of the magnitude 5.9 earthquake that hit eastern Paktika and host provinces. The foundation has distributed meals, raw materials and cash to hundreds of families affected.
Al-Mawasat Welfare Foundation collects the aid money from the Afghans living abroad and Afghan businessmen, and then we bring it to the needy people directly.
The June 22 earthquake was Afghanistan's deadliest in more than 2 decades. Over 1,000 people were killed and at least 2,000 injured. 10,000 homes were destroyed. Survivors are now living in tents and dread the coming months as the weather turns colder, unless timely assistance for them to rebuild their homes and resume livelihood arrive.
And that report there from Afghanistan eventually brings us to the end of this news edition. But for more details on this and other stories, as always, as ever, you can visit on our website on Eyeafrica.tv. But for now, many thanks for the privilege of your company. Thanks for watching and do have a pleasant evening. Bye for now.